noise. I don't know. Maybe with your mic.
It might have just been from me moving slightly.
Oh, okay, okay. Maybe it's
Do you still hear that noise?
maybe it's the oversensitivity of the mic. I don't know.
Do you still hear a noise?
Now it stopped. Yeah, maybe it's better. Yeah.
Happy Guru Rinpoche, everybody. Welcome. We'll give this a few more minutes while everybody joins. Let's see, let's get started now, actually. So, welcome, everybody. Happy Guru Rinpoche Day. We are delighted to have everybody back once again. For all of you that have been with us since the beginning of this journey, last August, we thank you for spending every month with us here, and we're happy to have you back again. And for those of you that are just joining us for the first time, welcome. This is our series following in the footsteps of the Lotus-born Guru, the life and liberation of Guru Rinpoche. So far, we've journeyed through India and Nepal, and today we turn towards Tibet for Guru Rinpoche's display of vast activity. I am Robbie. I'm joining you today from California in Los Angeles, and I am going to be joined by my wonderful co-hosts, Stefan, Peter, and Noor, who will introduce themselves now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Stefan, joining you again from Spain, Catalonia, and sharing again parts of the sacred sites along with the others. Happy Guru Rinpoche Day.
Hey everyone, happy Guru Rinpoche Day. I'm Peter. I'm joining you today from Hawaii. I'll share stories that unfold at these sites as well.
Hello, everybody. Happy Guru Rinpoche Day. I'm Noor, and I'm joining you today from Bodhanath in Nepal. And I will be primarily sharing stories and quotations from Guru Rinpoche's principal biography, the Pema Kasam. Welcome.
Thank you, everybody. So as we do in the beginning of every session, we'll start by generating the proper motivation going into this by remembering the words of awakened masters of the past. By the power and the truth of our gathering here today, may all sentient beings enjoy happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, and may they never be separated from the great happiness devoid of suffering. And may they dwell in the great equanimity that is free from attachment and aversion. Having set that motivation, we now invoke Guru Rinpoche once again, as we do in every webcast, just as the great masters of the past have done. In today's session, we will invoke Guru Rinpoche using the famous Vajraguru mantra chanted by Kyabje Do Drupchen Rinpoche.
Oh, yeah.
So to recap, in our previous webcast, we traced Guru Rinpoche's sacred journey north, which culminated in his arrival in Tibet. Along the way, we explored his enlightened activities in Nepal's Avehara Monastery, his passage through Sawarong, and his entry into Tibet via Mongyul, where he began subduing the land's spirits. This was sort of a necessary component for the Dharma to really take root in Tibet, this subduing of the spirits, which you'll see come up again and again throughout Guru Rinpoche's activities around Tibet. This month, in the 11th month of the Tibetan lunar calendar, we honor Guru Rinpoche's concealment of great terma treasures. In today's webcast, we'll dive into Guru Rinpoche's enlightened activities in Tibet, focusing mainly on the establishment of Samye Monastery, which many of you all know, and if you aren't aware of it, it's what we are all named after, Samye Translation, Samye Institute, and it is a site of great activity for Dharma, not just in Tibet, but throughout the world to this day. We'll highlight the pivotal contributions of Dharma King Trisong Detsen, born at Drakmar Drinzang, Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal, born at Tsogyal Lhatso, and the Great Abbot Shantarakshita. Together, these three ensured the completion of Samye Monastery, overcoming all obstacles. And today's episode marks the 6th installment of our webcast. As I said, we've been doing this now since August, and we'll continue all the way through till the coming August of 2025. If you missed any of the episodes, you can go back and watch. If you scan the QR code below that you see here, this will take you to our YouTube channel where you can catch up on any of the episodes that you may have missed. And additionally, our Nekhor website offers links to the Vimeo page. And for the Vimeo site, you can actually select whichever language you would like to hear the interpretation translated into, and listen to whichever language you're more comfortable with alongside our presentation. So now I'll turn the floor over to Noor to begin our story here with Guru Rinpoche and Samye Monastery.
Thank you, Ravi. I would like to take a moment before we start today to thank everybody who supported our last 2 Nekhor webcasts. These teachings that we're bringing to you, they come to life completely based upon your kindness. Each episode costs about $3,000 to produce through the hard work of our dedicated team. And for the last webcast, we received $350 in donations, which went directly towards production costs. If you enjoy these webcasts, please consider contributing. We really, really, really enjoy bringing these stories to you, and every little help that we can get makes a difference. You can support us through a recurring donation on Donor Box or Patreon, or a one-time contribution starting at just $3 through Donor Box or PayPal. To do that, you can simply scan the QR code, or which is on the screen right now, or visit samyetranslations.org/donate to give. Any extra funds that we receive will support Nekhor's continued growth as a resource, as a comprehensive resource on Buddhist sacred sites, making it accessible and valuable for both seasoned practitioners and beginners alike. That being said, welcome to today's podcast. I'm really excited to have you here. Thank you.
So hello, everybody. As we begin now our podcast or webcast today, let's settle briefly and locate ourselves from where we are in the story. So we're really at this crucial moment, at this turning point where Guru Rinpoche is entering Tibet, where the Dharma King Trisong Detsen, the Great Abbot Shantarakshita, are fulfilling the aspiration that has guided us through all of these webcast series and is a guiding light sort of throughout the life story of Guru Rinpoche. So really these aspirations that were formed lifetimes ago, this karmic link that we have brought up several times and highlighted, is basically at the point of fulfillment. And it's really this point where Dharma King Trisong Detsen and Abbot Shantarakshita, as well as Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal, and a vast sort of retinue or crowd of Tibetan people and the land of Tibet in its entirety are awaiting the arrival of Guru Padmasambhava. And Guru Rinpoche is, as Robbie mentioned, now entering Tibet and subduing the spirits and demons that pose or oppose Guru Rinpoche in the way. And Guru Rinpoche is binding to the Dharma and preparing the land for the arrival of Buddhism. And here we can see that already the sort of forces of the land start to oppose Guru Rinpoche in the threat that they see of the coming of this religion, the coming of Buddhism that will tame the land and transform the entire landscape. And here the spirits very much see that this might be taken from them, so they all rise and try to challenge Guru Rinpoche. But Guru Rinpoche defeats these challenges one by one. And it's actually a very interesting theme here that we will encounter again and again. But it also leads us into the overarching theme of Tibet and the establishment of Buddhism in Tibet. And we can really see that everything before sort of is in some ways also a preparation for the arrival of Buddhism in Tibet. And this is sort of the culmination. So the long years of study, if you remember that Guru Rinpoche passed in India, the transformation of Guru Rinpoche through these studies and practices, where we can see, very broadly speaking, India as the land of training, and then particularly Nepal as the land where Guru Rinpoche went into extensive retreats and deepened and reached higher and higher levels of realization. And then with the entrance into Tibet, we can see how now the activity phase of this grand sort of life story begins. And Guru Rinpoche's enlightened activity of establishing the Dharma and ensuring that it lasts for future generations. So if we look at the stories from now on over the next coming webcasts, and actually also if we reflect upon the crucial point that we're currently now in our day and age, where the Dharma is spreading far beyond and entering all the countries in the world in one way or another, we can see that similarly there, in a way, each one of us, but also in a way, the Sangha everywhere faces certain challenges that have to be overcome, that the ground that need to be laid for Buddhism to establish. And I think the Pema Katang shares this very, very beautifully through the life story of Guru Rinpoche and through this great enlightened master that here enters Tibet and lies the foundation of Buddhism in the most beautiful and astonishing way. And in many ways, this can also be a reflection upon our current circumstances as Buddhist practitioner or aspirants to follow the Buddhist path on the coming of Dharma to our land and the foundation that needs to be laid. So as we have pointed out, sort of the first bigger topic is the overcoming of great challenges. And on the one hand, these challenges manifest in the form of evil spirits, but also in the form of, for example, negative forces that take hold of the ministers surrounding Dharma King Trisong Detsen and trying to convince the Dharma King not to allow Buddhism to be established and not to allow Guru Rinpoche to actually enter Tibet. So we can see challenges that arise in many ways that are in the end successfully overcome. But it's also an interesting reflection on our own side, what these challenges might be and what these challenges on a personal level, but on a level also of our country or our region or our town might look like, and how we can sort of work with them and overcome them and trust in the Dharma. So alongside Guru Rinpoche overcoming these obstacles and challenges, we have here a great support that is represented by all the enlightened beings that basically help in this grand unfolding of enlightened activity, whether these are, for example, the great spiritual consorts, such as Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal, also the teachers, of course, of Guru Rinpoche himself, but also the students that supported this grand endeavor, and each playing sort of their own role and part, and each being important in one way or another to establish this foundation. Yeah? And then very, very importantly here, the first thing that we can see is the necessity to establish a physical support. So this is here Samye Monastery. Samye Monastery is sort of being here the first monastery established in Tibet, and symbolizing sort of the physical home of the Sangha, sort of the sacred environment or the sacred space where in the most intimate way the teacher and the students can meet to transmit the Dharma in an authentic manner and also on a grand scale. So there's really sort of the home for the Sangha that needs to be built first to have this physical foundation in place for this meeting to unfold. And secondly, we have the establishment of the enlightened speech or the transmission of the Buddhist teachings to Tibet. So in the first sense, the transmission means the translation of the scriptures into the native language, into Tibetan. So here we can see how in a vast effort, the many translators, the great skilled translators, underwent immense hardships to travel from Tibet to India and collect these precious teachings, bring them back, and then also translate them. This is the one hand, sort of the what is also called the Dharma of transmission. And then we have also the another important step, which is called the Dharma of realization, which is that not only the Dharma, not only do we need a physical home for the Sangha, the Dharma actually present in the country in the terms of the teachings, but also the necessity for the students to mature and uphold the Dharma themselves and become sort of realized upholders of the teachings so that they in turn can transmit the teachings again. So this is the third step in this unfolding. And this third step we will cover in the coming webcasts. In this webcast, we will mostly focus now on the points that we mentioned before with the establishment of the Grand Monastery of Samye. And then in the end, we can also see, which we will also cover in the coming webcasts, Guru Rinpoche's awakened activity to hide great treasure teachings or terma teachings for future generations to really establish an authentic lineage and also to ensure that these precious Dharma teachings last long into the future. Yeah. So these are the brief sort of overview and points that I think is important to capture at the beginning in sort of, and go over them in brief so that there can sort of be guidance points that we can rely upon and sort of see the grand picture when we go now into more detail into individual stories. And so the first point that we come to is actually going a little bit back in time, and we're now looking at the great king, the great Dharma King Trisong Detsen. And I will pass you over to Peter, who will share about the birthplace of the great Dharma King Trisong Detsen.
Thank you so much, Stefan. So we're actually going to start even before the birth of the king Trisong Detsen and talk about when Buddhism first entered Tibet, which was during the reign of King Songtsen Gampo, who was actually Tibet's first Dharma king, seen as the embodiment of the Buddha's compassion or Avalokiteshvara. So it was Songtsen Gampo with his consorts Queen Prakuti of Nepal and Queen Wencheng of China, who brought sacred relics and statues to Tibet, which led to the establishment of Tibet's first Buddhist temples. But there were some initial challenges there. One was that Tibetans continued to adhere to their ancestral shamanic traditions, the Bön religion, and there was also yet to be an authentic monastic lineage established with native monks and nuns. And this was something that actually changed with the birth of Dharma King Trisong Detsen. King Trisong Detsen was born as an emanation of Manjushri, the wisdom of the Buddhas. And it was he who was destined to firmly establish the Dharma in Tibet. It was his mission to build Tibet's first monastery, which we know as Samye. And so the reign of King Trisong Detsen, we can say, was guided by his spiritual quest to establish and spread the Dharma. He is to this day recognized for his unwavering dedication, his generosity, which was pivotal to Buddhism's spread. And through his dedication to the Dharma, to establishing the Dharma in Tibet, in the establishment of Samye, but much more, he completely transformed Tibetan culture, and therefore we look to him as the embodiment of the true Dharma King. So to reach the birthplace of King Trisong Detsen, one travels up the Drakmar Valley. A pilgrim today will pass Samye Monastery, which was his greatest accomplishment, and will reach the ruins of the ancient palace of Drakmar Drinzang. And so this was a palace that was built by King Trisong Detsen's father, King Tride Tsuksen, and included, as part of the palace, the temple of Drinzang, which was modeled actually after Mount Wutaishan in China. And we can still visit it today, and therefore visit the birthplace of the great Dharma King Trisong Detsen. So to talk a little bit about the birth of this Dharma King, it begins with Manjushri. And Manjushri sent down, it is said, rainbow lights to King Tride Tsuksen, and Lady Jincheng Gongshu. Excuse my pronunciation, but that was his queen. And from those lights, a golden boy is said to have entered the womb of the queen. And that same night, the queen had a dream of radiant light rays carrying a shining baby boy into her belly. and thus was the miraculous conception of King Trisong Detsen. He was born in the year of the horse, 742 AD, under an auspicious constellation. And when he was born, it is said that a miraculous warmth spread across the land of Tibet. As a young boy, as he grew, he mastered the arts of rulership and finally ascended the throne at the age of 13. He married 3 brides and was known to be an exceptionally skillful ruler of Tibet. He expanded the territory, governed well. But in the midst of his conquest, his successful conquests, he also began to reflect on the Dharma and how he could benefit people, and inspired by his ancestor King Songtsen Gampo's legacy. At the age of 16, it is said that he developed this strong determination to build Tibet's first monastery, and therefore ensure that the Dharma would be established there, something that his ancestor, King Songtsen Gampo, had already begun. And so it was at that time that he tasked his Chinese astrologer, who was known as Birje, to identify a site for this monastery. And the astrologer came back and said it should be in the Tamarisk Grove, which was also in the same valley of his birth, Drakmar. And yet, as mentioned previously, there was still these kind of shamanic ancestral forces that had yet to be converted to the Dharma, very present in Tibet and in the site, around the site of the construction of this monastery. So the progress of its construction was hindered completely. Every time the workers would build, at night, the foundations would be destroyed. So what to do? King Trisong Detsen sent envoys to India, and he sought a spiritual intervention for this issue. And to solve the problem, he invited the Great Abbot Shantarakshita, who was a renowned scholar from Nalanda Monastery, one of India's most famous monasteries. And Shantarakshita came, and there were some initial advancements, some initial progress, and yet these supernatural forces, these spiritual obstacles continued. And so the great abbot advised the king, and this is a story we mentioned in earlier podcasts, in earlier webcasts, that at this point, the abbot relayed a story of their past life together as young boys building the Great Bodhanath Stupa, and recalled the need for a tantric master to dispel these obstacles. And therefore the king, convinced, invited Guru Padmasambhava to Tibet. We remember in our past webcast, there was 3 invitations. On the 3rd, Guru Rinpoche finally crossed the border in Mangyul and began his journey to Tibet, taming obstacles along the way. So that kind of catches us up to the present in our story. For now, let's turn to Noor. She's going to discuss the birth of a wisdom dakini in Tibet around the same time.
Thank you, Peter. So, as the Buddha Dharma's foundations were being laid in Tibet, another embodiment of enlightened wisdom took birth in the snowy land. Her name was Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal, or as it translates, Queen of Lake-born Wisdom. She was a supreme wisdom dakini, destined to become the chief disciple and spiritual consort of Mahaguru Padmasambhava. And her spiritual journey is absolutely vital to the unfolding of Dharma in the land of Tibet. Indeed, Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal's profound spiritual relationship with the Mahaguru and her service to his liberating teachings has allowed the Dharma to reach the hearts and minds of all future generations. Guru Rinpoche shared the entirety of the Dharma with her so that she became the foremost holder of his life and legacy, and was appointed the guardian of his most treasured teachings, the Nintik, or the innermost heart essence of the great perfection. She displayed unparalleled devotion to the path and to her personal guru Padmasambhava, and she is an exemplary of an ideal disciple, and this was what led her to become the first Tibetan to attain awakening in a single lifetime. Wherever Guru Padmasambhava spread the Dharma, any moment that he deemed his treasured teaching ripe for concealment, the wisdom Dakini Yeshe Tsogyal was there, constantly enabling this activity to unfold. Her presence, her creative command, was a constant feature that enlivened every step of this grand process of awakening, both for the Tibetan landscape and its people. Thus, they are hailed together as Guru Yabyum, Guru Padmasambhava, the father, inseparable from his spiritual consort, the mother, Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal, together representing the union and the unity of skillful means and wisdom. Her birth at Tsogyal Lhatso marks the beginning of this extraordinary path, ushering in the dawn of Dharma in the land of snows. So to the west of Drakmar Drinzang, along the northern banks of the great Sangpo River, lies the Drak Valley. This was the ancestral home of the Karchin clan, and it was here that Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal was born on the 10th day of the monkey month of the bird year. Her birth was accompanied with skies which were completely filled with rainbows above the valley. And she is considered to be an emanation of the goddess of sublime eloquence. Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal was born to Palki Wangchuk, who was the chief of the Karchin clan, and his fair wife, Khandro Getso of Nup. The lake that had emerged beside the Karchin castle had swelled to double its size, overflowing its banks. The earth shook, and flowers fell from the sky, and now red and white flowers blossomed around the lake. Her father thus gave her the name by which she would become famous, Yeshe Tsogyal, Queen of the Lake of Wisdom. She was an extraordinary child. Even as an infant, she bore all the signs of a wisdom dakini, awakened from the beginning. Then as she grew of age, her beauty was unsurpassed, and it was to such an extent that suitors would take up arms to fight for her hand in marriage. And this got a little bit out of hand, and to avert war and quell the tempers of his chieftains, King Trisong Detsen decided to marry Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal himself. And in celebration, the royal assembly feasted for 3 months. But it soon became clear that Yeshe Tsogyal herself had little interest in the life of an empress. She begged the king for permission to devote herself to the practice of the Dharma, which in his wisdom he graciously granted. This cleared away the path so that her spiritual path could begin. Indeed, we know from the story of her life that she soon met her karmically destined teacher when Guru Padmasambhava came to Tibet. Tsogyal Lhatso, as seen here on the picture covered by a roof, marks the beginning of this incredible journey. For it was from these blessed waters that a Dakini was born, who would fulfill the Mahaguru's activity, allowing it to shine forth and bless countless generations to come. Now I would like to invite Robbie.
Thank you, Dora. Very inspiring hearing about Yeshe Tsogyal and her birth. So turning now back to our story of Guru Rinpoche and his entrance into Tibet and the beginnings of the establishment of Samye. So before Samye, as Peter mentioned, could be established, Guru Rinpoche had to eventually meet directly with King Trisong Detsen. And after repeated invitations and many months of waiting, King Trisong Detsen finally did meet Guru Padmasambhava for the first time at Zerkar Do. This is the confluence known as the Twin Castle. So Zerkar Do lies at the foot of a valley which runs parallel and just to the west of Samye on the banks of what is known as the Tsangpo River in Drakmar. And long ago, before Samye was founded, this was the site of the royal palace, known as the Twin Castle. Today, if you visit this site, there are actually 5 white stupas marking this area. These are known as the Rikna Chorten, rising high above the edge of the river on sort of a dry, rocky overhang. Just to the east of this, between Zerkar Do and Samye Monastery, in what is now a willow grove, there once stood a beautiful peach and walnut forest. This area was once known as Unpo Drakmar. This once verdant landscape, which was the very heart of the Tibetan Empire, hosted the king and his court as they awaited the arrival of Guru Rinpoche. So in welcoming Guru Rinpoche, they arranged a beautiful reception ceremony, replete with royal trumpets echoing through the air to signal the Guru's arrival. The welcoming party quickly assembled near the castle, their anticipation very much palpable as the Mahaguru drew closer. King Trisong Detsen stood beneath the cool shade of the trees, surrounded by his retinue, who are all adorned in their finest silks. So you can sort of envision a beautiful royal assembly awaiting this amazing teacher to really allow the Dharma to take root in Tibet. The time had come for their meeting. This was a very, very long-awaited meeting between these two royal representatives, Guru Rinpoche sort of representing the pinnacle of Dharma, and King Trisong Detsen representing the strength and power of the Tibetan Empire. But the question was, who would pay respects to whom? And I think this, so what ensues here is an amazing example of the sort of reverence that the Tibetans hold for Dharma over just worldly authority. So what we see is this royal king and this incredible tantric master sort of looking at each other eye to eye, wondering who would bow to who. And of course, King Trisong Detsen just automatically assumed that, I'm the king, this teacher, while maybe is a wonderful Dharma teacher, will certainly bow to the royal authority of the king. And from Guru Rinpoche's side, it was not something he was going to do, because Guru Rinpoche was aware that this lineage that he's holding is far superior to anything in samsara, anything our sort of worldly endeavors could achieve. And it would actually be a, somewhat of a slap in the face, so to speak, to the Dharma itself, if Guru Rinpoche were to bow to the king. So as Guru Rinpoche awaited the king to pay respects to him, he sort of erupts into this song rebuking the king's pride. And the king is sort of standing there with chest puffed out, just automatically, as I say, assuming that this great master will pay reverence to him by bowing at his feet. And as we hear in the following passage, this is not the case.
So Guru Rinpoche, he broke into song to rebuke the king's pride. And he said, I am Padmasambhava, the Buddha, lotus born. I hold pith instructions on the view that overarches all. I have trained in the teachings of the sutras and tantras, and can explain all the vehicles completely, unmixed. I am Padmasambhava, the sacred Dharma lotus-born. I hold pith instructions on the conduct that undergirds all. Externally, I possess the ways of a saffron-robed monk, while internally, unsurpassed, I practice the yoga of secret mantra. I am Padmasambhava, the Sangha, lotus-born. The Mahaguru continued with his song and finally addressed the king. Now, you are a king of Tibet, a land uncivilized, a king in a land of non-virtue. Your chest is swollen with royal pride, your belly smug with grand dominion. You stand so high and mighty, drunk in your machismo, scepter in hand. I will not prostrate to you, king, and yet our connection made through past aspirations has brought me here, to the heart of Tibet. O great king, have I not come?
What an amazing passage. Drunk in his machismo. This line is incredible. So the king obviously was shocked to hear this. Never before had he experienced such disrespect of his royal authority. Guru Rinpoche then made a slight hand gesture, and through this slight gesture unleashed a fury of flames from his fingers and burned the king's clothes to a crisp. So naturally, upon seeing this incredible display, the king felt immediate remorse in his hesitation to pay homage to the guru. Unable to take any more, every single one of them, all of those that were in the king's retinue, king, queens, ministers, the entire retinue, all fell to the ground, prostrating before Guru Rinpoche. And King Trisong Detsen immediately offered his apologies. The master then commanded to the king,
Emperor, listen now to what comes from the lips of this master. In order to repair your broken samaya with awakened form, build 5 wondrous stupas of stone and thus be cleansed.
So just as instructed, the king ordered this aforementioned construction of these 5 stupas to be built at Dzukar Do, symbolizing the transformation of the 5 negative emotions. The stupas were carved out of the rock that surrounded the area, and each adorned with a lotus. Upon their completion, Guru Padmasambhava hid sacred termas within each of these stupas. Once Guru Rinpoche's welcoming festivities had concluded, Padmasambhava took residence away from the busyness and distraction of the capital area, and he took residence at the Chimpu Caves, where he spent most of his time in retreat for many, many months, high above the site where the monastery was to be built. With the first day of the autumn moon, however, the time for Guru Padmasambhava's activity had come. The king invited the Mahaguru down to the palace and invited him to take a seat upon the throne of gold. At his side was the Great Abbot Shantarakshita, and both were offered food and drink, along with myriad gifts to please the senses. After offering these and many more, Dharma King Trisong Detsen spoke.
Myself, I am chief of the virtueless, lord of the red-faced ones. And the Tibetan people are coarse, hardened by affliction. Tame us, so hard to tame, and establish a support for Dharma. Incarnate Buddha, please bless this ground. Guru Padmasambhava delighted at the king's request, and he replied, O great ruler, protector of the Tibetan realm, your barbarous kingdom is a land of demons, and on my way here, I tamed many terrible spirits. Yet now, to tame Tibetans, worse even than monkeys, the king constructs a temple. How amazing! To initiate the construction of the sacred temple and overcome the malevolent forces obstructing its progress, the Mahaguru then ascended Mount Hepori. And now, Stefan, I would like to invite you to speak a little bit more about Mount Hepori. Thank you.
Thank you. So as we can see, the circumstances are all coming together. We had the first meeting of the Mahaguru Padmasambhava with Dharma King Trisong Detsen. And we can really imagine how in this first initial meeting, there was this really high anticipation where Dharma King Trisong Detsen, alongside Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal, alongside the Great Abbot Shantarakshita, all received the Mahaguru. And you can really see how sort of this auspicious circumstances that also formed due to each individual's aspirations, but also lifetimes ago, sort of in that moment, all comes to fruition. And sometimes it says also that when the angel, how do you say, when the circumstances are the most auspicious, the demons rise the most. There's sometimes little variations. And you can also see how these sort of last demons here manifested sort of in the individual person's, maybe in a sense you can say, that still had to burst and be not only on an internal level, but also on an outer level, sort of cleansed and get rid of. So in some ways, you can also say this is what unfolded here. And you can see in many ways sort of the preparation for this auspicious event that is now to come, sort of this most profound and most great accomplishment, which is Samye Monastery and all the surrounding circumstances sort of one by one being here established. And one of the great tasks, similarly with this sort of destruction of the negative forces that manifested in all sorts of ways, whether maybe in a slight attitude or in outer circumstances, these are now being dispelled. And they're being dispelled by Guru Rinpoche ascending what is called Mount Hepori. And this is a very interesting location, as it's sort of a vantage point above sort of the vast valley, as we will see in one of the next slides. And this is one of the sort of mountains surrounding where Samye was about to being sort of built, or the foundations were already being laid. And from here, you could oversee the entire sort of mandala, and you could, it was sort of the perfect point to subdue all these forces and bless the land for the construction. Yeah? But Mount Hepori was more than just a random mountain in the surroundings. It actually has a long history of smoke offering and worshipping spirits. Yeah? So from the old tradition, from the shamanic traditions within Tibet, you had this tradition of ascending exactly Mount Hepori and worshipping the spirits there. So you can see actually a connection that goes far into the back and into the past. Yeah. And the other thing here is that Guru Rinpoche at this occasion, actually, which is also very relevant and significant for many practitioners even nowadays, is that this is also the point where the tradition of making a sang offering, or in more easy terms, sort of the cleansing smoke offering comes from. So Guru Rinpoche takes these ancient ritual and transforms it into ritual of the Dharma by making this offering not only to appease spirits, but far more to bless it through this enlightened activity as a ritual through which the practitioner transforms outer circumstances, progresses along the path, pacifies outer circumstances, and can have a long and far-reaching effect on all the beings that might not directly be visible to us. But if you're interested, I'm sure on, like, for example, Samye Institute, you can find out more. And also, for example, Patrick Rinpoche and other teachers regularly teach upon this precious practice. Yeah. So here we're actually in the sort of origin side in many ways of this practice. But on the other hand, Guru Rinpoche did more than just transforming this ritual. It's Guru Rinpoche manifested in this sort of raffle form of Guru Dojo Jolo, which we can see time and again each time Guru Rinpoche engages in his enlightened activity of particularly subduing spirits. Guru Rinpoche assumes this very raffle form of Guru Dojo Jolo and blesses the land and subdues these evil spirits. It symbolizes on the one hand the complete transformation of these negative forces, but also this sort of most, in a sense, wrathful or wild form to subdue these forces. Yeah? And so Guru Rinpoche starts first with a peaceful offering to appease the surrounding land. And as he stands on the top, he gives the following command to the spirits. If Nor could read that.
Yes. So he says, listen. Listen, spirits and demons, to the words of Padmasambhava. My awakened form, dissemination, is unmatched throughout the world. I am Sokya Dorje, lake-born Vajra, never tainted by birth. Nothing can harm my body, for I have realized deathlessness. The samsaric suffering of beings in the 6 classes is frightening. Their lives are short, these barbarous beings, and their distractions great. The construction of a temple by Trisong Detsen is like the raising of a victory banner topped by a jewel. Once the Buddha's teachings are established in Tibet, your displeasure will make no difference, you spirits and demons. This, the invitation of the great Pandita of India, is like a lamp held aloft in the midst of darkness. Once the holy Dharma suffuses Tibet with happiness, your leaving will make no difference, all you spirits and demons. Enjoy these gifts, therefore, grant permission for this land, and fulfill the aspirations of King Trisong Detsen. Build the temple, spirits and demons, assemble for the work. Do not transgress the command of Padmasambhava, wielder of mantras.
So this was the word spoken very poetically here by Guru Rinpoche as he stood on the top of Mount Hepori. And as we see not only here, but also in the previous sort of dialogues, exchanges in the Pema Katang, it's always a highly poetic language. It's very, very beautifully captured, sorry. And you can see almost basically in all of these statements, in all of those lines, there are also lines that can invoke or inspire us to reflect, because more than just capturing sort of a dialogue, sometimes we might think, myself included, of course, here, this just exchange, but as you sort of hear these words and as we reflect upon them again, we can really see how there are many times they constantly invoke the truth of the Dharma and the teachings, and we can really see how each individual line, almost every word, captures some teachings from the Dharma. And we can see here how each of those instructions by Guru Padmasambhava and the dialogues or the obstacles that individual face or challenges are sort of also something that can help us to reflect upon our own state, and it can also help us to deepen an understanding of the Dharma. So we can always read or listen to these quotes with this in mind. So in this moment, Guru Rinpoche, having spoken these words, flies into the air and performs a Vajra dance in mid-air in this form of Guru Dojo Jolo. And it's now this sort of wrathful subjugation of all sort of the spiritual world, the spiritual domain, whether visible or not, and at the same time, a blessing of the land. Yeah. you can also see this nowadays, for example, then reflected within, for example, the sadhana practice, where you expel the obstructors to consecrate the sacred space. Yeah? And as Guru Rinpoche sort of now blesses the land and dispels all these obstructors that also then start to transform and listen to this command, this is really where the land and the sacred space is established. And this is really sort of a significant shift and moment that is occurring right now. That is actually that we have it here captured also in these pictures from a precious mural depicting actually the Pema Katang. And previously we saw also the mural that when Robbie gave the explanation in the meeting of Guru Rinpoche and the Dharma King. This is now in the left upper corner, currently not so visible, but I hope you noticed it. And then here we can see, for example, Guru Rinpoche flying in the air, a little bit below the stupas in the left upper side, where he's performing this Vajra dance in mid-air. And then below you can see how the construction then of the Samye Monastery begins. So here the foundations are being laid, and you can see both humans and non-humans working side by side. And this is really this moment that the Tibetans have longed for, that these sort of obstacles that build up their endeavor of the Dharma are being constantly blocked, or these challenges that arose. And now with this blessing and this sort of destruction of the last negative sort of forces, the building begins in rapid speed. Yeah. And here we come now basically to the point where the construction of Samye Monastery begins with a big thank you offering from Dharma King Trisong Detsen. And now we turn to Peter.
Thank you, Stefan. So at this point, King Trisong Detsen is overwhelmed by the kindness that Guru Rinpoche is showing to him and to the Tibetan people. Guru Rinpoche had accepted his invitation to come build Samye Monastery, had bound spirits, and was blessing the land. And in recognition of this kindness and this incredible opportunity to receive authentic transmission, King Trisong Detsen invited Guru Rinpoche to his palace one day, and there, in front of the entire assembly, offered his entire kingdom to Guru Padmasambhava, making use of a golden mandala, which symbolized the entire universe. So not only the kingdom, but the entire universe is offered by the king, the Dharma King, to Guru Rinpoche. And it was at this time that the king formally requested Guru Rinpoche to be the principal guide of Tibet and to help establish Samye Monastery. The king recited at this time a very famous verse of offering that we still recite to this day when we request a Buddhist master to teach the Dharma.
The ground is purified with scented water and strewn with flowers. It is adorned with Sumeru, king of mountains, and the 4 quarters of the universe, and the sun and moon. Thinking of it as a blessed Buddha field, I offer it. By the virtue of this offering, may all beings here and now attain the happiness of that pure land.
So along with this beautiful verse of offering the entire kingdom, the universe, represented by this golden mandala, the king was also well aware that one of his queens, Queen Yeshe Tsogyal, was absolutely devoted to the Dharma. And so at that moment also offered her. He released her from all of her worldly obligations and gave her to Guru Rinpoche as a disciple, to be now a full Dharma student, let's say, of Guru Rinpoche. And Guru Rinpoche, on his part, accepted joyfully Guru Rinpoche as her teacher, as his student, and could see at that moment that she would be an incredible force for benefiting the Tibetan people and the Dharma. And so at that point, Yeshe Tsogyal left the royal court and was now firmly at the side of her teacher, Guru Rinpoche. With this all in place, the kingdom offered Guru Rinpoche now at Samye. Progress was swift. So under Guru Rinpoche's command, the spirits who had once been obstacles now helped with the construction, while humans built during the day, the spirits built at night, as they say. And Nora's got a quote for us there.
So it says in the Pema Katang, 60,000 workers prepared the clay bricks, and once courses were laid and the work got harder, the ministers called on the spirits and demons to take up the task. Thus, Brahma and Indra became bricklayers too, and the 4 great kings became supervisors. All the spirits and demons, male and female, chattered together as they laid the bricks. Compared to what flesh-bound humans built by the day, the spirits and demons, all 8 classes, built even more by night.
So now the spirits were under the Guru's firm control. They were assisting with the construction, and at the same time, resources were flowing in for the construction, and the entire site was therefore supported and protected by Guru Rinpoche's presence. The progress was rapid, and the construction of Samye Monastery was completed in the Fire Horse year, or 766, making 5 whole years for the construction of Samye Monastery. The title given for this monastery, the long title, translated Glorious Samye, the inconceivable, spontaneously accomplished temple, was thus Tibet's first Buddhist monastery. Now, at the end of this same year, the Fire Horse year, Guru Padmasambhava and the Abbot Shantarakshita consecrated Samye. And as part of this, they performed various rituals. They scattered the flowers of auspiciousness. And then in the following year, Guru Rinpoche opened the Vajradhatu Mandala at the eastern door of Samye's 3-styled temple, so the main temple at the center of this image here. And he performed 7 days of practice. And it was at that time that Guru Rinpoche bestowed empowerment upon King Trisong Detsen and blessed Samye in a most extraordinary way.
So it is said in the Pema Katang that Guru Padma went through the flowers of consecration. And as the flowers were falling on the 3-styled temple, the statues within started to leave through the eastern door, holding their implements aloft and waving them about. The king wondered whether they shouldn't be put back, but the statues made 3 rounds of the temple and stupas and once again returned to their places within.
Such was the incredible power of Guru Rinpoche's blessing. And we can imagine the amazing spectacle greeting the assembled Tibetans at that time. Not only were the statues of the main temple show that they were alive, so they were actually moving like they were real, alive, living beings. Protectors also arrived, and the entire region was enveloped in incredible signs of auspiciousness.
It says in the Pema Katang, all the temples were consecrated, flower petals strewn, and wisdom deities descended into the statues for all to see. Rays of light blazed forth, and music resounded. the gods showered down a rain of flowers, and the Nagas came with gifts of precious gems. And so the world was filled with every auspiciousness. Male and female protectors arrived, flanking the temple's sides. The stone pillars shot forth flames, and the dogs on top of them growled and barked. 3 times arura fruits were showered down like rain. Over all Tibet and calm, auspicious signs and goodness reigned. Gods and men were filled with joy again and yet again. And so the banner of renown unfurled across the land.
Samye, amidst these kinds of incredible auspicious signs, was thus consecrated and became a sacred site that grants liberation just upon seeing it. It's said that connecting with it, even in the smallest of ways, offers immense spiritual benefits. And this is true not only for those assembled that day, but for all pilgrims of the future, including us, if we're to visit Samye Monastery.
It says in the Pema Katha, Samye is equaled only by the Vajra seat of India, unrivaled by anything under the sun. Seeing it with your own eyes closes the doors to the lower realms. Whoever circumambulates around it will be reborn in the heavenly realms, even if they are a butcher. Whoever prostrates in homage to Samye will ordinarily become a great and magnificent king. And whenever the story of Samye is told to others, the one who hears will be freed from all their karma.
I guess that includes us. So with Samye's completion, the king Trisong Detsen's heart wish was thus fulfilled. There was now a physical support for the Dharma firmly established in Tibet. And we thus have Samye now present as a wish-fulfilling gem for the sake of all. I'll leave it there for this part of our webcast and turn to Stefan.
Thank you. So with this auspicious beginnings well laid and well accomplished, the task at hand, the physical foundation, was completed in a most grand scale and auspicious way. However, while the home for the Sangha was created, the task to establish the Buddhist teachings, as I also pointed out at the beginning, was not complete. So the physical home for the Sangha was established, and now began the next great endeavor, which is the translation of the Buddhist scriptures from the languages such as Sanskrit and others, from the various sort of countries where the Dharma originated from, into the Tibetan language. And for this, first of all, Tibetan translators needed to be trained. And it was here that actually, through the clairvoyance of Guru Rinpoche, the search for exceptional individuals began within the land of Tibet. And here the Pema Katha recounts that actually the Buddha's own disciples had been reborn amongst the Tibetans, such as the great Aryananda and others, and were now amongst the Tibetan children's, ready to re-establish the Dharma in Tibet. And in their clairvoyance, Guru Rinpoche and the Great Abbot Shantarakshita identified these very skilled children that had this potential to really become these extraordinary translators, but also practitioners. And they brought these in their care and started teaching them Sanskrit and other languages to become these translators who could travel the long distance from Tibet through Nepal to India, especially to the great monasteries of Nalanda and Vikramashila, and engage in this great undertaking of translating these most precious teachings and bringing them back and establishing the Dharma in Tibetan, in Tibet, yeah? And from all these sort of translators, we can remember, for example, famously Lhotsava Vairochana, as well as, for example, Kava Peltsek, Chokului Gyaltsen, and many of these other translators. They say 108 in total were trained in this process and became these very great translators that then received the honorary name Lhotsava. And from all of these translators, the Great Abbot Shantarakshita ordained first initially 7 individuals, 7 Tibetans into the Mula Savastavadin lineage that he had brought himself from Nalanda. And so they became the first Tibetans that were ordained and joined the monastic Sangha. And with them upholding the vows, many more disciples joined. And so the great Abbot Shantarakshita established the lineage of monastics within Tibet. And for those that disciples that either had a family or could not necessarily uphold these vows, Guru Rinpoche established them or initiated the lineage of tantric practitioners, or ngakpas. And then it said in this way, the first sort of the great sanghas of the red robe monks and the white robe ngakpas or tantrikas were established auspiciously in Tibet. And with this, these disciples received sort of their initiation or entrance into the Buddha Dharma. They studied the great languages such as Sanskrit. They traveled the long distances through Nepal, and as we learned in our last webcast, also studied in Nepal, rested in Nepal, went further down south to India, to the many great kingdoms there, and brought back the scriptures of the Dharma and translated them in India and other countries, as well as in Tibet itself. So with this sort of second grand project was begun and also auspiciously concluded, so that all these amazing scriptures were gathered at Samye Monastery, installed at Samye Monastery, and the sort of a grand feast was held in celebration of the translation of all of those scriptures. Yeah? Alongside this sort of vast undertaking, and we have to say we're in some ways kind of rushing through it because all of these undertook, of course, several years and were not accomplished instantly. But while this translation was taking place, the great Lhotsavas also invited many more great scholars. And here, first and foremost, we can, beyond these masters that we already mentioned, the translators traveled back to Udayana, the home country of Guru Rinpoche, and there requested the king Indrabhuti to please send one of the great scholars from Udayana to Tibet to help establish Buddhism in Tibet, to help teach the Dharma to the disciples, and to help the entire translation process. And here, very fortunately, King Indrabhuti gave permission to send his first and foremost scholar, the Mahapandita Vimalamitra, who then traveled alongside many other great Panditas back to Tibet and helped in this very amazing undertaking. So, for example, these efforts were also joined by the famous master Buddha Guya, who's also remembered as a great master of the Guya Gaba Tantra, or Gusangwa Ningpo. And alongside also joined, for example, from Nepal, the masters such as Shila Manju and Vasudhara that we remember from previous episodes. Also the great master Humkara, who was the accomplished practitioner of Yangdak Heruka or Vishuddha Heruka, the deity that Guru Rinpoche also accomplished at Asura Cave in Yanglishe, So all of these masters flocked towards Tibet and helped in this grand establishment of Dharma, all alongside these disciples who in many ways supported this amazing endeavor. And once all these scholars had gathered and this sort of grand undertaking was auspiciously completed, the Dharma King assembled everybody in the great hall of Samye, and here made a vast offering. And we have again a quotation from the Pema Katang. If Nor, could you kindly read that?
Yes. So it says in the Pema Katang, countless teachings of Sutra and Tantra were, day and night, translated, studied, explained. Throughout the Tibetan kingdom, Dharma schools were established, and sutras and tantras compiled in myriad volumes.
So the entire process to establish, first to build Samye Monastery, as we heard before, took 5 years. So the time that it took to translate all those scriptures once everybody was gathered was another 13 years. And here, the teachers not only helped in the translations, but all of those great masters, of course, first and foremost, Guru Rinpoche, then we have Mahapandita Vimal Mitra, the Great Abbot Shantarakshita, and many others, also gave the clarifying instructions and transmitted the explanation for all of those scriptures. And once these texts were translated and gathered, they were installed in the middle temple at Samye Monastery, on the middle story. And we have another brief short quotation from the Pema Katang, and it's the moment where then in this sort of being deeply sort of touched and absolute sort of moved to the bone or from the core, we have King Trisong Detsen, who over the last, what do we have, more than 20 years now, roughly, just overjoyed that all these aspirations, which once just, all this undertaking, which once started with sort of this aspiration to establish the Dharma, all is coming to fruition, and really sort of his life's aspiration fully manifests in a most extraordinary way. So he's sort of deeply moved and really offers all his treasures to these great scholars, and is just from the bottom of his heart expresses his gratitude. And here then we have sort of the concluding quote from the Pema Katang for this amazing undertaking.
So it says in the Katang, then the great Indian Panditas, each escorted by their Lotsava, embarked upon the journey home to their own lands. Like the rising sun, the Dharma now shone upon Tibet.
So we can see here that, as you say, the torch has been passed on. So from the transmission, and there's many extraordinary stories of the individual Lotsavas about their hardships, about their training, about their journey, that we here sort of can't elaborate upon, but you can, for example, read upon this in the Guru Rinpoche books, but also, for example, there's an entire book just on the life story of the great Lotsava Vairochana. I think it's called The Great Image. It's also available online. In these individual lives, for example, of Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal that we talked about, these episodes that we share also from a separate book just on the life story there. And these many stories all tying together in this grand sort of process of awakening and establishing the Dharma. And now sort of the Dharma fully taking hold within Tibet itself. And these sort of auspicious beginnings sometimes can be a little bit sort of overlooked in a sense, but it's very important to sort of remember these very beginnings of the establishment of Samye Monastery, where everything comes together, all these auspicious conditions meet, because in some ways Tibet feels very far, and Samye Monastery as well. But another way, in many ways, it's here right now with us all the time as we move, as we breathe, because it's sort of this great legacy of Samye Monastery that we can still feel sort of vibrating and alive in all the great Dharma teachers that teach Buddhism in this present day. Because if you go back to the source, this is where it comes from, and this is where it sort of begins. So this legacy, we can see this sort of very deep, the importance of establishing this very, very well. Because if this is established extremely well, this is sort of the benefit that it can have in the future over thousands of years, that still, while even physical buildings might disappear, the sort of legacy goes on and inspires millions and millions of practitioners that then follow the spiritual path and awaken and realize the truth in themselves. And here's just a short side note. This whole sort of, this auspicious origins, this sort of to honor really this legacy, is also one of the reasons, main reasons why Patrul Rinpoche for this organization chose the name Samye, to really remember this great legacy and maintain this legacy, and to, how to say, spread the blessings of this legacy. Yeah, as for example, here in the webcasts, the webcast takes place within the Samye organization. This was just, I thought, an interesting connection now to mention with regard to the name of also the webcasts within there taking place. Yeah. So please also take your time, and you can reflect upon these beginnings, because of course this brief webcast doesn't really capture and can really pay honor to the immensity of this project. You're also most welcome to read again about the story in more detail, for example, in the Guru Rinpoche book, especially the Tibet volume, and explore these in more depths. You can also reflect upon again with the many great biographies that are translated and available of Guru Rinpoche and the other great masters. And with this auspicious beginnings and the foundation laid, so in the next webcast, we will go into the transmission of the Dharma from Guru Rinpoche to his disciples, especially the 25 disciples, as we will hear. And these will unfold at Samye Chimpu in particular, in the other great caves. So where Guru Rinpoche transmits then the Dharma of realization, the innermost heart teachings that he has received, the very essence of the Dharma, to his most trusted disciples. And not only that, these disciples in turn then become upholders of the Dharma. So then the Dharma of realization is also established as the students, the Tibetan students, and first and foremost, actually, Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal really travel the spiritual path and attain awakening themselves. Yeah. And with this, we conclude, and we hand over to Robbie, who will briefly share again some news with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Noor. Thank you, Peter. What an amazing story. Kind of really coming full circle into the name of the organization, and placing ourselves squarely within the activities of Guru Rinpoche. Incredible. So speaking of Guru Rinpoche's activities and experiencing the blessings of those activities in today's world, in our modern time, I just want to remind everybody that we still are launching our first pilgrimage, Nekhor's pilgrimage to the sites of Guru Rinpoche in Nepal. That will be happening this coming March during the first month of the Tibetan New Year. And I'm happy to say that we have more than filled our required minimum for attendees, so we will most certainly be embarking on this trip. We do have some space left too. So if anybody still wants to join, there is still room. It's not too late. There are a few spots left, but if you are interested to join, I encourage you to register rather soon to make sure that you're able to get one of the remaining spots left for the trip. If you do wish to register, you'll see this QR code that's on the screen now. You can scan that, and that'll bring you to a link where you can put all your information, and we will get back to you shortly if you do register with more information on travel and arrangements in Nepal. If anybody has any questions about that, just email info@samyetranslations.org. I have been monitoring that email account and hopefully have been able to address all of your questions. But I will continue monitoring that account, and if you guys wish to, again, to join the pilgrimage, please do so, and I'll be happy to share any additional information and answer any questions you might have. The other piece of information we wanted to share is regarding the Guru Rinpoche books. As many of you know, we have re-released the Following in the Footsteps series for Nepal and India. These were out of circulation for some time, but if you do wish to order a copy of either Nepal, India, or Tibet, you can do so. The India and Nepal volumes are available for a limited time while we are doing this webcast, so they will remain available until August of 2025. So if you wish to purchase a copy, the books are available on Amazon. And lastly, I want to sort of open the floor to any questions. So far, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but if you do have any questions, now is the time. And if there aren't any questions, that's also okay. We can conclude here. Okay, I think that'll be it. We will conclude our session then. We thank all of you for joining. Again, thank you to Noor, Stefan, and Peter. But thanks to everybody who's joining us every month, or again, if it's your first time, it's really, really wonderful to be able to share this space with you every Guru Rinpoche Day. It's been a very special experience for us, and we hope to see you again in February 7th. So with that, I will dedicate the merit. Through this merit, may all attain omniscience and conquer the enemy, wrong action. May all be freed from samsara's ocean and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day or have a wonderful evening, depending on which corner of the world you are. And again, we hope to see you next month.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.